Hello, okay, so my name is Kale. I'm going to be filming a quick video about the Choose Your Own Text assignment and talk about the book of Mice and Men, which I've had the opportunity to read. It was a Nobel Prize winner, and it was by, sorry, I have all my notes up here, John Steinbeck. This book is a classic. Actually, I've read it a few times. I actually read it back in school as well, and there's just a lot of interesting themes and interesting story plot lines in this. So I think this book is really interesting because it lays out what Aristotle, what we learned in class about Aristotle's character work. So the main character is George and his partner Lenny. They are both African farm hands that work on this new farm. They go from place to place and find work wherever they can. And so they find work at this ranch that has main characters there's other ranch hands and things like that that will kind of interact with them. One of which is named is Candy. He's an interesting one. I wrote him down there because he's quite a frightened character, and Slim, who's also kind of on the back burner, but then he comes up sometimes. This story takes place throughout a couple of months and seasons and in this farm where Lenny and George are finding work. But the thing is, Lenny, he is mentally ill, and it never really clarifies exactly what he has, but he's kind of a child at heart. But he's a grown man, and he's a big burly man. That's why George sticks with him. And so right off the bat, Aristotle's character work is just coming into play. The balance that Aristotle talks about and kind of the contrast of characters. Lenny's character is very interesting per se too, because there's parts where George is like, "Oh my gosh, Lenny, you're gonna get a puppy from our ranch hand like manager," and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited!" And there's a part in part 3 where George has to like calm him down and be like, "Lenny, it's gonna be okay, don't worry, like I know you're excited." And there's even a part where this is much farther into the book where Lenny actually kills that puppy, and he's so sad because he's angry at the puppy for dying, not at himself. He's just angry at the puppy, and so it shows like he's very immature at heart. So anyways, just a lot about that. There's also a part in Aristotle. I really like what Aristotle talked about as well in tragedy, about how there's a lot of buildup in a story arc and how it falls down, and sometimes it builds up again and it falls down. The tragedy arc of Mice and Men is a big buildup. There's like small ups and downs, but there's a big buildup. And then at the end of part 6, Lenny, he accidentally kills Curly's wife. Curly is one of the white men on the ranch, and so there's this big buildup to where that has to be the tragedy. And Lenny doesn't know what he's done, but he knows that it's bad, and so he runs away. And George has to go and find him, and before everybody else finds him, and he has to make a choice to actually put an end to Lenny, which is really sad. But there's a few other things that I really thought was interesting while I was reading this. We talked about in class, this was recent actually, things about words and works and texts and performance. I wanted to focus on performance and the performance of this book. Particularly, I mean, it's not like a stage performance, obviously. It's a book, and so it's kind of like the performance is in your head. But particularly the materiality of this book, the things that it talks about. It often talks about white rabbits that Lenny is so excited to pet, and soft things like Curly's wife's hair. And then it also talks about like objects like they're playing cards and solitaire, and they're helping with the ranch, and they're feeding the animals, and it explains ponds and all these things. And so materiality is a big part of this book. It's not entirely the premise per se, but it is a deep part of reading it and trying to understand the concept within itself, which is definitely what we've learned in ways of reading, is looking at it for more of its rhetoric, and which a reminder of rhetoric is kind of multiple things. what the author is trying to say, what we're trying to accomplish by reading it, the medium of the text, the style, the themes, the context. When I read it in this context, I'm just going through all of these stages of life and school and trying to figure out what to do next. And I kind of feel like George and Lenny going from one place to another, trying to find work. And it's interesting to see that right when something is starting to work out, it comes to an end in a tragic way, like Aristotle said. I had a lot of fun reading this book. It's also really a heavy topic, but I learned a lot, especially in what we talked about in ways of reading and just how to read, what to understand, what the author is trying to tell you. I definitely felt like the author was trying to tell me that, one of the main themes is that life can be good, but it can also come crashing down, and that you can't always trust the people that you're around. That was true for sure with these ranch hands of Mice and Men, and they're not slaves per se, but like the black workers that were portrayed in this book. So yeah.